they taught, hygiene and basic things. They're also taught the Word of God. And so we did a VBS for 139 kids. And I was very, very impressed with how well behaved these kids were. We divided them up into 3 groups, and we did a game time. We did a craft time. Was very impressed with how our craft time went. Hannah Lee, who went on the team from just outside of Holton, her church bought enough craft supplies for 700 kids. And she took them all down to Bolivia. And Hannah, I won't say she's a crafty person, but you know what I mean, okay? She just did a tremendous job putting this together, and the kids loved it. And those that helped with it did a tremendous job. It went very well. One of the things they did was, because a lot of Bolivians wear flip-flops, and so they made flip-flops. And this little boy, on one side, he put beads that made the Canadian flag, and on the other side, he put beads that matched the Bolivian flag. And we were pretty impressed by his creativity. But it was so neat, guys, to see kids just be kids, have fun in the games, to enjoy craft time, and then we did Bible time. And there's Keenan. Even though Keenan's my son, I have to tell one thing that he did. Keenan has not been back to Bolivia for 7 years, and we talk Spanish around the house from time to time, but Keenan was telling the story, and he was telling them that God would take away their sins, except he added an S. Instead of telling them that God would take away their sins, he told them God would take away their fish. So we'll get him arranged with Dr. Doherty and get that straightened out. But anyway, we corrected that little S. One letter makes a big difference. God will make you fishers of men. He won't take your fish. And so we do not know how many children accepted the Lord, because I do not like to have people raise their hands and things of that nature. We just share the gospel and trust the Lord to do the work. We did have several children come up to us and talk, and it was evident that the Lord had done a work in their life, and we were so impressed with Compassion in this location. And then we went to another day, we went to another location where Compassion, it's a new work. Oh, by the way, every location that Compassion is working with these kids, they also have a church there. They're planting a church, and the building is multi-purpose. It's used for kids during the week, and it's used for a church on the weekend. And God is doing an amazing work. In the second location, they're working with 700 kids. And the pastor told me that they have about 70 adults coming on Sunday and about 100 kids. And it's amazing how God's working. And we were told to prepare for 400 to 450 kids. We're not sure exactly how many came, but there was at least 300. We were prepared for 450. Based on our supplies, I think somewhere around 350, 360 came. But we found these kids to be hyper. We found them to be busy. And there we are in the facility. They were very energetic, but each child got to hear the gospel. And again, we divided them up into 3 groups. I felt like I had to yell when I was preaching. I had very little voice when I was done. One group was well behaved. The other 2 groups, Sarah could only sit on 3 at a time. But we worked. We had just a hard job keeping them in their seats. The other group, you just said, the other church, the other location, we said, okay, be quiet, and they were quiet. These groups, you said, be quiet, and they thought it meant make noise and jump up and down and run around the building. And it was very much a challenge, but I'm thankful for my crowd control. And but again, they got the gospel. In fact, the one group that I was really discouraged with, because it was just like preaching to popcorn, because they were up and down and they were around. And one little boy came to me afterwards and he said, "Do you mean if I believe this, I won't go to the fire?" And I said, "Exactly right." And he said, "Yes." So And again, we did craft time and we did games there. We always fed them afterwards. We gave them either chocolate milk or a fruit drink, and then something to eat as well. We made one mistake by giving them donuts, which had sugar, which is a no-no. And as this picture of Jonathan shows there, this actually isn't an accurate description because there should be about 20 more kids. And this is how we felt at these locations, that the kids they just came to you. And they are so deprived of love. And they so desperately need it. And more importantly, they need the gospel. And our focus as well, which we've tried in other years, and that's the focus on the Brickyard kids and VBS with the kids. And I'm very, very pleased with how it went this year. The team that went, I can't say enough positive about them and how they connected with the kids. And the Vargas family's working with about 130 kids, an average of 130 in just a couple pictures. Those that have went before, you know that when you get there, that these kids, it's almost like they pick, like, he or she is my person, and they just gravitate to you. And these kids, they will tug on your heartstrings. And it's not uncommon to talk to a child that hasn't eaten for 2 days. Sometimes we talk to some kids that had eaten for 4 days. And this little girl is carrying a pancito, which is like a hamburger bun, a banana, an orange, and she had an apple in her pocket. And so the poor thing was just starved, just starved. And it's too bad Emma can't be here to tell us the story. We'll talk more about this family of the girl that she's holding at the end. But it's so interesting to see the transformation in the kids as the week goes on, and see the smile that's on their face. And those that have went before have noticed, and it always encourages me, because we don't understand how much we communicate when we as white people pick up Bolivian children that do not have access to a shower, clean clothes, etc., etc. And when they see us doing that, and when other Bolivians see us doing that, guys, it's like the story of the Good Samaritan. When we go over and meet the needs, address the wounds of that person that's lying there, it communicates so much. And again, there in the Brickyards, games, Bible time, games and crafts and times with the kids. And not this past Saturday, but the other Saturday, we took 129 of them to a water park. And it would be the equivalent of them going to Disney. And that's just a little picture of the water park. And some students learned that even when it's overcast, you will burn. But that's another story. One thing that I'm big on, you know, that we at NBBI are big on, and that's the local church. And Jaime and Sandra have a good local church, a strong church. In fact, guys, I know of no other church like this church. The programs, the activities that they have. Every third Sunday in their church is a mission Sunday. Every third Sunday. They do 3 mission trips a year where they go to remote places in Bolivia. And they take at least 20 people. And they always take a medical team. They take a dental team. They take people that are qualified to teach the Word of God. They're averaging 7 baptisms a month. People are getting saved. And in fact, this church, they first fill up the seats, the benches, and then they put chairs in the aisles, and then people have to stand outside because they cannot fit in the church building. And church is normally 2.5, 3 hours. I guess there's no normal. there's no time limit on the church service. And the Sunday we were there, it went over about 45 minutes. And but we're seeing people saved. Children do not come into the church building because they cannot fit. They have Sunday school that entire 2 or 2.5 hours. And can you imagine a church that cannot fit children into their building because they have so many people? And we've got to be careful too, because we don't want pride to come in there. But a few years ago, this church was in problems. It had problems and several difficulties. But you know, they got down on their knees and they straightened them out. And I met one night with the bookkeeper and the pastor, and they showed me their books going all the way back to 2014. And you probably can't read the Spanish there, but it says, "No tenemos el derecho de guardar dinero." And the church is convicted of this, that we have no right to save money. Every month they zero out the books. Every month. And whatever they have, once their bills are paid, they give it to missions. They give it to missions. And they showed me the books going all the way back to 2014, that every month they zero out the books. And God seems to be blessing. Interesting, huh? The emphasis on youth. When we were there, it was Carnival, which is a very, very sinful holiday where they believe God turns his back on the world for 3 days. It's amazing people that don't believe in God, what they do when they think he's not looking. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? And so to help the young people from falling into sin, they plan a retreat. And 114 young people went on this 4-day retreat. And when we were there at the church, the young people were missing, several adults, and there were still 75 people, 75 adults there at this church. I was just blown away. I had the privilege of preaching in this church, and the pastor asked me to preach on integrity, and it was just a really neat fellowship. One of the things that we did this year, our focus as well, was evangelism in the brickyards, where we divided up into 2 or 3 teams and went out into the brickyards and shared the gospel. And there's so many stories we can tell about this, how God led. And I did not keep records, but just going back over the names and whatnot, we know that over 40 adults accepted the Lord. And it was amazing seeing how the Lord led in those conversations. And I'm going to have some of the team talk here in just a second. But I'm just going to tell you that one day we had about an hour and 15 minutes. And I said to Kendra, I said, let's go and evangelize. We've got an hour and 15 minutes. And so we grabbed, I don't remember if it was Sarah Ann and Hannah Swanson, I don't remember, but we grabbed 2 other people, and I just felt like the Lord had us to go to the car wash. And the car wash is on the back side of the brick wash, or the brickyard. But this car wash is not like a normal car wash, because they take a pump and they put it down into muddy water. It's like washing the dirt off so you can put mud on your car. And we went back to this car wash, and there was a husband and wife there that didn't have any vehicles to wash, and we sat down and shared the gospel with them, and they both got saved. And on the way back, Kendra said to me, I was almost tempted to complain, because why walk 15, 20 minutes and then have to walk back when we've only got an hour and 15? And those 2 people accepted the Lord. And you could just see it when they accepted the Lord. You could see the transformation. And I'm not sure what Nathaniel's going to share, but these are a couple pictures of some people that accepted the Lord, and some neat stories, and hopefully you'll hear some. So Nathaniel, te toca. It means it's your turn.
So this was my first ever missions trip, and what an experience it was. I guess I'll just start off by saying that before I went, I had a lot of nerves. I was really unsure about what this experience would be like. I was nervous about the fact that I was no longer in North America. I was no longer able to communicate back home. I didn't know the language. So one of the things that Mr. Grant shared when he was preaching down at the church in Coach Bamba there was that, it was great too because I love tea. It was that we need to be tried in hot water, like a tea bag. And when you put the tea into the water, then there's flavor. And so I guess that when I was down there, I was being tried in hot water, and I didn't really know what to expect when I went down. And well, you could definitely see the way that God was leading when we were down there. So one of the things that really grabbed me when we were down there was the evangelism aspect of it. One of the things that Jaime had shared, that when the teams normally go down, is that they're there to build, and they're there to usually work on building projects. And this year was really different because we didn't really end up building much other than a wall and dig a trench. But instead this year we got to see like so many people come to Christ, and that was so cool. One of the opportunities that I got to have when I was down there was that we would go out to evangelize, and there's a picture there with Sandra. She would take out groups, and Mr. Grant would take out a group, and there was just one time where we were like, hey, let's go out evangelizing, and Sandra just grabbed me, and the two of us went, and all of a sudden we have no translator, and we're like walking up to these people, and it's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? There's this guy here, and he's got to know about the Lord, but there's no one to translate what I'm trying to say, so I had to use what broken Spanish I had learned, and Sandra tried to fill in the gaps, but that person ended up coming to the Lord, and that was so cool. And then right after he had gotten saved, Sandra was like, let's go get Keenan, because we actually need someone to translate. This is taking way too long. So Keenan actually came to help, and Dylan was there with us as well. And we went and we talked to these other two men whose names were Emilio and Paulino. And it was funny, as we went to go walk up to Emilio, Paulino calls over to him and is like, don't listen to those white people, like, they don't work hard or anything like that, so what's the point in even listening to them? So we went and we talked to Emilio. I believe he had gotten saved, and then we went directly over to Paulino, and myself and Keenan and Dylan just started stacking his bricks for him, and while Sandra shared the gospel. So the fact that we were able to be there and to do his work for him really meant a lot to him, and it kind of changed his perspective about us white people trying to share the gospel. And yeah, it was amazing to see the way that God worked. It was a really crazy experience. There's so many different things that happened. Like Mr. Grant said, while we were down there was Carnival, and the people, they believe that God turns their back on you, and that God doesn't see the things that you do, and a lot of the time there's a lot of sin. As we would head back to the guest home, just down the road from where we were staying, there's like huge parties, and you could hear them cheering throughout the night. And another thing that really stood out to me while we were there was we went to the market, and there's a lot of witchcraft and things that happen in that specific picture there. Actually, I'll share this story. The two people there, their husband and wife, their names are Alex and Regina, and those are their 3 children. And when Regina was pregnant, she saw a snake and got scared, and I believe it's the oldest boy. When he was growing up, he didn't want to learn anything, so they were concerned because, well, maybe it's because she got scared during pregnancy, and so they went and consulted with a witch to try and help him with his issue of not wanting to read or learn. And it just clued into me, like, people put their trust in satanic things. When we were there in the market, we went, one of the people there with us, Teo, who was translating, he took us through the witches market while we were there, and you could see things like dead, shriveled up baby llamas hanging from the ceiling, and like chicken feet, and like incense, and all kinds of different things, and charms. And those are the types of things that people put their hope in down there. And it's so evident that the people need the gospel. And I'm just thankful that we had the opportunity to go down there and share with so many people down there. Yeah, so I guess that's what I'll share. I'll let the rest of the team go.
Guess that's accurate. So I'll go quickly because other people can share too. So last year when the team came back, I knew I wanted to go to Bolivia. And then as it approached, probably you remember after prayer meeting on Thursday before we left, I was like freaking out because I'm like, oh my word, we're leaving for Bolivia. What in the world is going on? And then when we got there, I was a little discouraged because I'm like, okay, God, I'm here and I don't know the language. How am I supposed to connect with these kids? Because I love working with kids and I've always wanted to work with kids. But when you don't know the language, it's really hard. So I didn't know how to interact with them. But then through a conversation with Teo, one of the main translators we had, because he also spoke English, which was a huge blessing, he encouraged me that just for these kids, giving them a hug is like the biggest thing in the world to them. And that I can just give them a hug and spend time with them. So these 4 kids, pink shirt is Elise, the boy is John, the little girl on the ground is Ori, and the older girl on the you're right, my right too actually. That's awkward. Oh my word, her name is Vanessa. And these 4 kids have stolen my heart, as well as the hearts of other people on the team as well. They come from a very, very broken home. Their dad left them, and they're in the middle of divorce, and mom isn't around very often. She, we learned later, her job is to butcher cows, and pretty much she isn't around. She goes out to party. After she's done work, she comes home, drops off her bloody clothes for Vanessa to clean, and goes off to party. And they don't have food for days on end. Actually, when we were there, we heard that mom hadn't been seen for like 5 to 6 days, so we had no idea where she was. And it was really cool to see the change throughout the trip, because when we first got there, Vanessa was always with her 2 younger sisters, and John was just running around being a boy. And slowly, Ori graduated towards Emma, and Lise came towards me. And Vanessa was still around the first day and like very protective and like wondering what was going to happen. But then the next day that we were there, so that was Monday, we weren't back again until we were back Tuesday, but they weren't there. But Thursday they were back. And it was really cool because Ori was with Emma, Lisa was with me, and Vanessa was running around like a kid and playing because she knew her siblings were safe. And it was okay. And throughout the time there, we learned their story more. And on Monday, a week ago yesterday, we went to go evangelize. We went to go talk to their mom because we heard she was home, but when we got there, she wasn't there. But I asked, what is it, like, is Vanessa saved? Like, how would we know? And they weren't sure, so we got to share the gospel with her. Mr. Grant translated for me, and it wasn't super, super clear because my words were all jumbled up. And when Vanessa originally said, when I asked if she believed that, she said no because it was in English. So Kendra took over, one of the Vargas girls, and shared it all again in Spanish, and she accepted Christ. And you could see it in her eyes, like she was crying at the end, and you could see the change. Especially the next day when we went back, because we heard that their mom was back again, was going to be back the next day. We went back, we yelled, Vanessa, Lee, sorry, we're here. And Vanessa runs out the door around the corner, grabs her mom, and as she comes back around the corner, she has the biggest smile on her face as she has her mom in hand. And Mr. Grant got to share the gospel with her, and she professed to be saved as well. On Monday, we found out that Lise, the girl in the pink shirt, that I always had most of the time, that her mom sold her. Just one day, sold her completely to a couple guys. And the neighbors found out and called the cops and got them back. But the mom wasn't very happy because now she had to pay back the two men. So that was heartbreaking. It especially broke mine and Ben's heart. We were both crying a lot. And it's just to see these kids, when we bring them food, eat it like there's no tomorrow. And for them just to be in a small home with a bed, a small stove in the corner, and they had a TV, which shocked me as well. And that they can have a TV but not food for the kids to eat. And there are papers behind the wall of the door when we got there, and Mr. Grant read them, and I asked them what they said. And one of them was towards John the boy and said, "Listen to Mom or Vanessa or you'll be whipped." The one was towards Lise saying, "Listen or you'll be beaten." And the third one was a list of things they had to do, like make the bed, keep the house clean, like household chores. And the last one was, "Keep the house clean or you'll be beaten." And like, for those papers to be directed towards kids, it's like you can't even wrap your head around it. Like, you just can't. So we still need to really pray hard for this family. I know they're on my mind constantly. I was talking to Kendra last night, and she updated me with some things that are happening there, and it's not good. Mom, she professed to be saved, but there's not evidence right now. She's still living with the world, partying, and actually she recently just beat Vanessa because she lost a little bit of money, which it was really hard to hear that last night. So we really need to be praying for them hard, and I know I will be. But one thing I can cling to is that God keeps his promises. Because while I was there, my Devos was a series on God's promises, and as I was doing it, I remember thinking in the mornings, like, God, why am I doing this? I know all these promises. But it didn't click until Sunday when I was at Lydia Violet's house and doing my Devos, and realizing these promises are only true for me, but they're true for Vanessa. Because Vanessa is saved and God's never going to leave her, is going to be there. And if the profession that their mom made was genuine, that the promise in Philippians 1:6 that God will perfect the work until he comes, that's true for her. And I can cling to those things, and knowing that my God is mighty, and that even though I'm here in Canada and really want to be back there with those kids and just loving on them, that God is there, and he knows Spanish, even though I don't as well. So, yeah, that's it.
So this was my first ever missions trip, so it was a really, really cool opportunity that I really felt God had opened the door for me. I didn't tell everybody about the story, but God really just provided every single fund that both Hannah and I needed before Christmas break, and it was really cool to see that, because going in, I didn't really think God would be able to provide all the money that both me and my sister needed, because we both have the same funds sources. But God provided more than enough. We both had an extra $600 each that we didn't even need, so we were able to give that to the mission trip. So it was really cool to see God provide in that way, and that just confirmed that I was meant to go on this trip, and that God had something that I really was going to learn a lot and just grow through this experience. So hearing many different stories from past mission trips, I didn't want to go in with any expectations, because I just wanted to go in and see what was new and what God could teach me through it. And it was just amazing seeing how God worked throughout all the trip, from just the smoothness in travel as we got there, because I've heard of past times where people didn't get their visas or tickets got all messed up and stuff, but everything went perfect up until like we got there. There was no problems travel-wise, no problem with the flights, bus was perfect. Got to the guest house, everything was amazing. So that was really cool to see just God work that out. Weather, we got down there and it looked like it was supposed to rain every day for the first week we were there. With thunder showers and stuff, but again, God worked and held the rain off until the evening, which was perfect, because they still need rain to help with their bricks and their crops, but we were able to be out in the sun and just enjoy the weather and reach out to the people. So that was really cool, seeing God work with the weather. And then I got to go evangelizing for the first time ever. Really, really nervous. Didn't really know what to expect with that, but I was with a Greek group, and it was really cool to see. The first time I went out with Mr. Grant, just watched him do it and just see how that was done. And the second time I went out with Nathaniel, Sandra, me, Sarah, and Jed. And we went out, planned on going in a direction, but the road was flooded. And so instead of going straight, we decided to go left down this other road. I went to this house, and there was a lady there named Margarita, and we went in, and Nathaniel was able to share the gospel with her. And through just sharing and God working, she accepted the Lord as her Savior, and it was amazing to see. And then after that, she told us how normally she works and she's gone at that point in the day, but for some reason she felt God wanted her to, or not God, she felt she just needed to stay back and wait for some reason at her house. Didn't know why, but she did, and then we went and shared the gospel with her. So it was really amazing to see how God just worked that out perfectly by changing our direction that we were going to go, leading us down the road, and then getting her to stay at her house so that she could hear the word and be saved. So that was a very impactful experience for me. Just really cool to see how God can work and is in total control through everything. Just a few things that I learned from this trip that God just taught me was you can serve in many different ways. With Mr. Grant said, we had a Saturday where we took kids to a water park, which is amazing for them, really cool experience. And I put sunscreen on, but I don't know, it must have washed off or something. And at the end of the day, I wound up with second-degree burns on both my shoulders. And so the next 2 days, I was stuck at the guest house. And I was really frustrated because I didn't go down all the way to Bolivia just to stick in the guest house and chill. Yeah, Caleb can relate. So I was frustrated, but I talked to my parents, and they said this was just a really great opportunity for me to learn. I can be a prayer warrior for the team and stay back, even though I can't be out there working, because that's something I love doing, is just being a leader and getting my hands dirty and being out with everybody and doing stuff. But God taught me that you can still serve in different ways, and you don't have to be right in it. I was able to do laundry for the guys, which is super humbling, but it's still some way I can minister and serve and just pray, because that's really big. Another thing is you have to give your life fully, because God can't use you fully if you're not giving yourself fully. And that's something, because I've never wanted to go on a missions trip before. The first 2 years I heard about it, and I was like, that's not for me. That's something else. I'm not a missionary. But coming into this year, when Mr. Grant talked about it, I was like, okay, God, if you want me to go, give me a peace, show me that this is something you want me to do, because I want to be willing to serve in any way you call. And so that was really cool, just seeing if I was willing to go and he was able to use me. And with that, don't stay comfortable, because you can't really be stretched if you're comfortable. And that's the third thing I learned. Through all my life, I've just been wanting to stay comfortable, sticking with what I know, because I don't want to get out and stretch and do stuff that I'm not used to, because I'm not used to it. I don't want to do that. But this was a very, very stretching experience for me. And the better part about this is, if it's stretching, you have to depend on God more. And you can't just depend on your knowledge and your strength because you're used to it. And so that was something that was really challenging for me. And I just encourage you guys to think about is you don't have to go on a missions trip, but don't just stay comfortable with what you're used to because it's comfortable and you don't want to get your hands dirty or stretched, because God can use you and it gives you a chance to trust on him. So, thanks.